within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, patriots and preppers, I'm Mack Worley III, and this is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. As I've said before, this is not my show, this is your show, this is your grassroots activism movement. It's the On the Move movement. It cannot function without you, however, it is bigger than one man. I want to thank each and every one of you for your patriotism and for taking the time to get involved. Today's going to be a really great show we have in store for you all. The date is March 23rd, 2014, and we, like I said, we have a real good show at 5:45 or around there. We're going to be joined by special guest from the Libertarian Party. He's a candidate. His name is Chris Rockhold for the 17th District, and he's running for position 2. With that said, we're going to be talking about a bunch of different topics, such as the crisis in Ukraine, the legalization of marijuana, and crony capitalism in the local level as far as the Seattle area and what's going on with Boeing and whatnot. So we're going to talk about a whole different things, and we'll also bring up whatever you guys would like to talk about. So whatever else comes up, feel free to join the conversation if you have any topics that you'd like to discuss or questions that you have for Chris or myself. We'll be taking your calls and reading your emails. So if you want to join the conversation today, please give us a call at 619-924-0986. Again, that is 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. All right. Also, don't forget to check us out at onthemoveshow.com, here at blogtalkradio.com/onthemoveshow, Facebook.com/onthemoveshow, YouTube.com/onthemoveshow, and Twitter.com/onthemoveshow. Also, if you're listening to this, please go ahead and go to my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, Facebook.com/Mack Worley. That's MackWorley, and the Roman numeral 3. So Mack Worley number 3, and add me as a friend. I'm accepting all invites, and especially if you you believe in liberty, you're trying to spread the message of liberty. Please add me as a friend. I'm looking to network with everybody and other like-minded patriots. So, also, you can check out our store at onthemoveshow.com by clicking the shop link on the homepage. We have hundreds of products for sale on there, and it ranges from T-shirts that we have originally designed. So it's for patriots by patriots. We also have freeze-dried food available on there to buy. You can look at books that I recommend reading, and we got bumper stickers that are available for your purchase as well. We got a whole bunch of other stuff on there, so feel free to check it out. Your purchases will make On the Move bigger and better, and we really do appreciate your support. The stuff that we get off of that, it will be used to make the podcast bigger. We're going to try to get more equipment to make the show better, make the quality better for you guys. So feel free to check it out. Just go to onthemoveshow.com and click the shop link on the homepage. So anyway, I would like to mention the fact that I've started a new segment on a show called Sounding Off with Tank and Tony. It's here on blogtalkradio.com, and if you just search them on blogtalkradio.com, Sounding Off with Tank and Tony, I do a 5-minute segment on their show now every Friday. So feel free to check that out, and keep an ear out for me. I'll be on there every Friday. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the first segment of today's show, and this segment is called This Day in History.
This Day in History.
Because people have got to know whether or not the president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Yesterday, what our country can do for you.
Mr. Gorbachev,
Defend our
tear down this wall.
And the people who knock these buildings down.
A date which will live
in infamy.
We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
All right, this is a really important date in history. On March 23rd, 1775, that's 239 years ago today, Patrick Henry delivered his address to the Virginia Provincial Convention, in which he has been said to declare, give me liberty or give me death. I found a clip of this speech online hosted by the YouTube user SCW1217, so feel free to check out any of their other stuff they have on there. I know this is a little long, but I think it's important, and being that it is the day, I think it's important that we reflect back on this. We need to know where our country has been and what we've been through, where we've came, and what struggles we had to overcome. And, I think it's important for us to actually, know what was said in these speeches and know where our founding fathers stood on these issues. So, and we can relate a lot of this kind of stuff to what we see today. So, I have a clip here. It's Patrick Henry's speech, "Give me liberty or give me death."
No man thinks more highly than I do of the patriotism as well as abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have just addressed the House. But different men often see the same subject in different lights, and therefore I hope it will not be thought disrespectful to those gentlemen if, entertaining as I do opinions of a character very opposite to theirs, I shall speak forth my sentiments freely and without reserve. This is no time for ceremony. The question before the House is one of awful moment to this country. For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery, and in proportion to the magnitude of the subject ought to be the freedom of the debate. It is only in this way that we can hope to arrive at truth and fulfill the great responsibility which we hold to God and our country. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time through fear of giving offense, I should consider myself as guilty of treason toward my country and of an act of disloyalty towards the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kings. Mr. President, it is natural to man to indulge in the illusions of hope. We are apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth and listen to the song of that siren till she transforms us into beasts. Is this the part of wise men engaged in a great and arduous struggle for liberty? Are we disposed to be of the number of those who, having eyes, see not, and having ears, hear not, the things which so nearly concern their temporal salvation? For my part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging of the future but by the past. And judging by the past, I wish to know what there has been in the conduct of the British ministry for the last 10 years to justify those hopes with which gentlemen have been pleased to solace themselves and the House. Is it that insidious smile with which our petition has been lately received? Trust it not, sir. It will prove a snare to your feet. Suffer not yourselves to be betrayed with a kiss. Ask yourselves how this gracious reception of our petition comports with those warlike preparations which cover our waters and darken our land. Are fleets and armies necessary to a work of love and reconciliation? Have we shown ourselves so unwilling to be reconciled that force must be called in to win back our love? Let us not deceive ourselves, sir. These are the implements of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. I ask gentlemen, sir, what means this martial array, if its purpose be not to force us to submission? Can gentlemen assign any other possible motive for it? Has Great Britain any enemy in this quarter of the world to call for all this accumulation of navies and armies? No, sir, she has none. They are meant for us. They can be meant for no other. They are sent over to bind and rivet upon us those chains which the British ministry have been so long forging. And what have we to oppose to them? Shall we try argument? Sir, we have been trying that for the last 10 years. Have we anything new to offer upon this subject? Nothing. We have held the subject up in every light of which it is capable, but it has all been in vain. Shall we resort to entreaty and humble supplication? What terms shall we find which have not already been exhausted? Let us not, I beseech you, sir, deceive ourselves. Sir, we have done everything that could be done to avert the storm which is now coming on. We have petitioned. We have remonstrated. We have supplicated. We have prostrated ourselves before the throne and have implored its interposition to arrest the tyrannical hands of the ministry and Parliament. Our petitions have been slighted. Our remonstrances have produced additional violence and insult. Our supplications have been disregarded, and we have been spurned with contempt from the foot of the throne. In vain after these things may we indulge the fond hope of peace and reconciliation. There is no longer any room for hope. If we wish to be free, if we mean to preserve inviolate those inestimable privileges for which we have so long been contending, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have so long been engaged, and which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our contest shall be obtained, we must fight. I repeat it, sir, we must fight. An appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all that is left us. They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so formidable an adversary. But when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week or the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed and when a British guard shall be stationed in every house? Shall we gather strength by irresolution and inaction? Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs and hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemies shall have us bound hand and foot? Sir, we are not weak if we make a proper use of those means which the God of nature hath placed in our power. The millions of people armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country as that which we possess, are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations, and who will raise up friends to fight our battles for us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, and the brave. Besides, sir, we have no election. If we were base enough to desire it, it is now too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come! I repeat it, sir, let it come! It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death!
Man. Okay, so that was the speech from Patrick Henry. I can't help but get goosebumps every time I hear that. So I hope you guys all enjoyed it as much as I did. You know, I think it's important that we don't forget the kind of tyranny that our founders had to face. You know, they tried to petition the king, but he wouldn't listen. You know, they tried acts of civil disobedience, and they were met with force. You know, it was only after years and years of tyranny that they finally realized that there was no more talking to be done. And they came to the conclusion that they had actually come to a crossroads. You know, they would either have to be forced to submit to the king's will, or they'd have to fight. You know, there was no middle ground that they could get on. There was no gray area in that. It's either submit or die. So, you know, there's no amount of reasoning that they could do at that point to prevent bloodshed, because the King of England was a tyrant, and you can't reason with tyrants. And we can see that today with the ideologues that we see in our current government, and you just can't reason with these kind of people. So, you know, I'm not saying that I'm recommending, you know, an overthrow of the government, but what I am saying is that, you know, that when it comes to this kind of tyranny and usurpation of powers, you know, the people have the absolute right to basically overthrow their government, you know, shed the chains that their government has put on them, and, you know, stand up for what's right and stand up for freedom. So, anyway, we're moving on. If you want to join the conversation today, give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. All right, at this point, it's time for my favorite part of the show, and it's called The Weekly Defender.
And now it's time for The Weekly Defender. You have the right to defend your life, the right to defend your family, and the right to defend your freedom.
All right, this is a segment of the show where I report about armed citizens in the news who have used their firearms to defend their family, their property, and themselves. Our first weekly defender we found on KTRK News in Houston, Texas. On March 15th, which, by the way, was my birthday, an armed robber entered a Phillips 66 gas station in Houston, Texas, and demanded money from the clerks on duty. The clerks responded by retrieving firearms and exchanging gunfire with the criminal. Following an initial shootout, the robber retreated to the rear of the store and started throwing motor oil and windshield wiper fluid all over the store. The standoff between clerks and the gunman lasted for almost an hour until one of the clerks shot the robber when he came out from behind an aisle. Not yet finished with his crime spree, the wounded criminal then started a fire in the store. Eventually, police arrived in the store and captured the criminal. The owner of the store estimated that about $100,000 in damage was caused to the store by the robber. Neither clerks were injured during the incident, so that's a good thing. But man, it took an hour for this thing to be resolved, and it was saying that eventually the police arrived. It doesn't specifically say that it took the police an hour to get there or not, but if so, that's ridiculous. An hour. And just remember, and I say this every time it seems like we talk about the Weekly Defender, the police have absolutely no duty to protect you as deemed by the Supreme Court. You can't sue the police for not showing up. You can't sue the police for taking their sweet time to get there to help you. So keep it in mind, you know, the police have absolutely no duty to protect you, and that's a Supreme Court ruling. Don't believe me. Look it up yourself, okay? Look it up. Find out for yourself and see if I'm right, because I've done the research. I've looked it up, but don't take my word for it. Anyway, our next weekly defender we found right in my own backyard here on Coin News. On March 18th, a homeowner in Washington County, Oregon, was walking his dog along his property when his neighbor's Doberman Pinscher approached him and began to attack. The homeowner was carrying a shotgun at the time of the incident and used it to fell the vicious dog. Following the shooting, Corporal Nick Marcos of the Washington County's Sheriff Office told a local news outlet, "As a citizen, you have a right to protect yourself from injury or harm, even death. In this situation, he carried a shotgun with him because he was working on his property and the dog chased after him, attempted to attack him, and he ended up shooting him." Anyway, that's a terrible incident. You know, unfortunately, it sucks that this person had to kill a dog. But, you know, I mean, you do have a right to protect yourself. And if that dog was being vicious and about to attack him, he had a right to kill that dog to defend himself. So, you know, we here at On the Move, we love hearing about how law-abiding citizens use their firearms to protect themselves. You have a right to defend your life. You have a right to defend your family. And most importantly, you have a right to defend your freedom. We at On the Move, we support your rights. And if you have a story about how you lawfully defended yourself, or you'd like to comment on one of these stories, we'd like to hear from you. Give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that is 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. All right, at this point, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. And by the way, we got some new commercials for you guys. We're in the works of getting them all edited, but this is what we got so far for new ones. When we get back, we're going to go into the new segment, or the next segment of the show, the Mack attack. So we'll be right back.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
All right, we're back. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. All right, so this next segment of the show we like to call the Mack Attack, and it is where I give you my take on outrageous events in the news.
It's time for the Mack Attack!
So what's going on now? All right. One thing that I would like to talk about is what's going on in Crimea. I mean, this is so important, and it seems like the news has been dominated with so much other stuff, like the missing plane and, any other bull stuff. Any other bull that you can think of that's going on. So what do I think? What's going on? Russia's decided to annex Crimea. Crimea voted to secede from Ukraine and has become an independent nation. All right, the Crimean Tatars, which are they're basically the Muslim section within the population of Ukraine. So the Tatars in the region, they were leading a movement to keep opposition from the secession home. They wanted people who didn't want secession to stay home. And there was already talk in the early polls that there would be something like above 80% approval of secession. But anyway, the Tatars, they wanted it to be as close to 100% as possible. Not because they wanted to secede from Ukraine, but because they wanted the vote to look illegitimate on the world stage. According to CNN.com, on March 16th, with 75% of the ballots counted, close to 96% of voters want to become part of Russia. Another official had announced that with more than 80% of voters that had cast their ballots, more than 80% of the voters had cast their ballots by the time the polls had closed. So, we're also hearing some reports here, and this I think is scary. We're hearing reports that people that oppose Russians' involvement in the Crimea and the secession of Crimea are disappearing. People don't know what happened to these guys. So, that's kind of scary. You just speaking out against this kind of stuff could actually get you disappeared in these countries. So, it's something to think about and something to keep an eye on. So what are my thoughts on the situation? And I know I've said it before, but I think that Crimea does have a right to secede from Ukraine. I would never argue against that. Just like any nation or any group of people, section of people have a right to secede from a tyrannical government or a government that they don't agree with or anything along those lines. So, and the case could be made that Crimea has a right. So, the problem I have is Russia's involvement. I don't think that Russia has a right to invade another country, and I think that you're really having a hard time to say that Russia was not an aggressor here. It's obvious that Russia has been an aggressor here. And I think that they've been breaking the Geneva Convention this whole time. I believe that they have people in Crimea, which at the time was Ukraine. It was Ukraine territory. So, and those people in Ukraine were not in military uniforms, or at least not with any kind of insignia showing what country they're from, which is a direct violation of the Geneva Convention. So, What's Russia doing? They're bullying around Ukraine. They've even killed a Ukrainian soldier in a recent attack on one of their military bases in Crimea. According to USA Today, Ukrainian soldiers in the province of Crimea had been left in a limbo after Crimeans voted Sunday to join Russia, a referendum that Ukraine and the West said was unconstitutional. So apparently our leadership is saying that it's unconstitutional for that, but I would disagree. Anyway, they held on to their bases, and they were surrounded by Russian troops and mobs of pro-Russian Crimeans. A confrontation at one of the bases on Tuesday left one Ukrainian service member dead. That actually prompted an order from Kiev that Ukrainians could fire their weapons to protect themselves. This did not happen, though, in Sevastopol. So, my opinion is that Obama has reacted all wrong, in my opinion, every step along the way. And, I would argue that Obama has reacted this way purposefully. And I think that, obviously, he has just as much information, probably more. I hope he has more information about it than I do. And even I can see, I'm just Joe Schmo, I can see that his actions are weakening us every step along the way. He couldn't be weakening us more if he was trying to, which I believe he is. So, anyway, he started imposing sanctions on Russian officials. And here's my problem with this tactic, all right? This is the first thing I have to say about this. If sanctions worked, then Cuba, would they still be under sanctions? Because it's been more than 50 years since we imposed sanctions on Cuba. That was February 7th, 1962, when we started imposing sanctions on Cuba. Are they any better? No. Why? Why aren't they any better? They should be better because they've got all these sanctions imposed on them now. Oh, well, I'll tell you why. Because sanctions don't hurt the people at the top. They hurt the people at the bottom. They hurt people being oppressed by those at the top. A dictator, he's still going to take his cut the same as he did before. He's going to take, basically the problem is that he's going to take a portion of the pie equal to what he took before. The only problem is that pie is now smaller. So now there's less for people, for the regular people, the common folk, when all is said and done. So, my problem with Obama's approach is all this chest puffing he's doing too. He keeps saying that we're going to react strongly if Putin doesn't back down. Well, then what do we do when Putin doesn't back down? We write a strongly worded letter, or we give some speech. This kind of action only serves to embolden Putin and the rest of our enemies on the world stage. At this rate, Iran is going to think that they can get away with anything. And I'll tell you, I think that Iran is a wild card. This situation is somewhat under control because Putin doesn't want to have a nuclear war with us. We don't want to have a nuclear war with Putin. And it's understood. We have this mutual assured destruction between them. But Iran doesn't share those same beliefs as far as mutually assured destruction. Iran doesn't care if we nuke them. Iran doesn't care if they start a global thermonuclear war. It doesn't matter to Iran because they want the world to be on fire. They believe that their God will return if the world is on fire. And if the world is on fire, that's a good thing for them. They want to hasten the return of their Imam. So with that said, it's kind of dangerous in this situation because, they keep pursuing a nuclear weapon. And if they actually get a nuclear weapon, we're in real trouble. Not to mention, Russia has even threatened that if we don't back down in imposing them, that they'll start supporting Iran in their attempt to get a nuke. If Iran gets a nuke, they're going to attack Israel. And just in case you didn't know, Israel is a strategic ally of ours. So, in case you're wondering what that means that if they attack Israel, we are now at war with Iran. And Iran, from what I understand, is a strategic ally with Russia, and Russia's a strategic ally with China. So, and obviously North Korea is in the mix in there too. So, if Iran starts a war, we're all in it. You're talking World War III at this point. This is a wild card move right now, and this is how I could foresee World War III kicking off. That's why it's so important that we look strong on the world stage. But no, Obama keeps making us look weak. And why would he do that? Well, perhaps it has something to do with his father. I've read a couple different times where his father thought that our country needed to be taken down a peg or two, and I personally believe that this is a plan from Obama. Why would you become a president of a country only to destroy it? Well, because you think that it needs to be taken down. So I think that Obama really has a disdain for the fact that we're a superpower. I think that he has a disdain for the fact that we tell other people what to do, but yet he's doing the same thing, and he has no problem telling Americans what to do. But anyway, I digress. I'm getting a little further off into the weeds here. So as far as Russia, what should we have done then, Mac? Should we have just sat back and done nothing then? Well, first, let me just say I'm glad that you asked. And second, of course not. Of course we shouldn't just sit back and do nothing. But there is a much better solution. Russia's economy is based on oil. They need it to be above $90 a barrel. Without oil priced high, they will fall on very hard times. With that in mind, we need to drill for our own oil. We need to frack for natural gas. And we need to make that deal for the XL pipeline. If we do all of those three things, simple things, we'll see some major results. And those results will be, first, we're going to see thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of new jobs in America. Think about it. How good would that be for us right now as a country? Not even thinking about Russia, not thinking about the threats out there that we need to actually address, but we need jobs. That has got to be the biggest issue in America right now, is the lack of jobs, unemployment, people being out of work. There are so many millions of Americans right now that don't have a job. 1 in 5 men are without work. And we got millions of people on food stamps. The poverty rate is incredibly high. It's unbelievable how bad things are right now in America. And, this would be the answer. Jobs. And we're not talking about just, low-paying jobs. Like, for example, Obama, he wants you to believe that he's making jobs in the economy. Well, a lot of them are in the service industry. So, those aren't really high-paying jobs. Are you a cashier at McDonald's? Well, you got a job. That's the way Obama looks at it. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being a cashier at McDonald's. It's a great stepping stone, but it's not a high-paying job. And if we're losing jobs in America and replacing them with McDonald's, we got a real problem. That's not the answer. This is the answer. Drilling for oil, fracking for natural gas, that will produce so many jobs in America, and they're really high-paying jobs. Just look at what's going on in the Bakken oil fields in North Dakota and down in places like Midland, Texas. Those places have so many high-paying jobs now, and it's trickling down because they're in small areas that don't really have a lot of population. So you get a job in the oil fields or something, and it's paying like $100,000 a year. They have starting pay 6 figures a year in some of these jobs. I mean, it's unbelievably high-paying jobs. So you can go get a job like that, or you can go to Midland, Texas, or somewhere in North Dakota out there, and you can get a job at Walmart and start making $15 an hour in Walmart or Subway, because they need people to work at these jobs. There's not a big enough population of people in that area to fulfill the demand for these places. They need people to work at these places because now so many people are moving to this area for these high-paying jobs. So let's say for some reason you can't get a job in the oil field or a job somewhere doing that kind of stuff. It increases the job pay in these other jobs as well. You don't have to work in the oil field. You can work at Subway. You can work at Walmart. You can work anywhere. You can start your own business. Now there's more customers in that area living there. So, I mean, that's just one small aspect, and that doesn't even touch on Russia. These are just smart moves. So what will it also do? It will see energy costs plunge dramatically. The cost of living will go down in America because of this, which means that our dollars will go further. It'll take less money to buy things at the grocery store because oil costs less, because those prices plunged as well. So now gas costs less, diesel costs less to get the food to you, it costs less to manufacture things, it costs less to do everything. So we'll see a cost of living in America go down. Our dollar will start to raise in value instead of crash in value like it's doing right now with the Fed stimulus just dumping billions of dollars, $80 billion worth of money into the stock market to artificially inflate it. So since Russia's economy is based on oil, the Russian threat will be taken care of without even firing a shot. And if we get the XL pipeline, we will ensure that Russian interests never can. Not only that, but we can get our friends in Europe away from being dependent on Russian oil. So all of these are great things that could happen to us. Notice that when I said that all this stuff, I never said anything about threatening Russia. Well, why would I say that? Why shouldn't we threaten Russia? Because they're being an aggressor. Because it's not necessary. We can win just like we won the Cold War. Why make enemies when we don't have to? You know, I would rather make friends. You know, especially giving these other countries the chance to buy our oil on the cheap. You know, give them cheap energy. Let them come buy our energy. That's great. That just increases our exports, and that's more money for America. Perhaps we can even get some of Russia's allies, you know, to get hooked on our energy, and then we can put the squeeze on those guys politically to stop being so aggressive. We can get their allies who like our cheap energy, and you know, maybe we can politically motivate them to talk to Russia to stop being aggressive. All of this stuff we have at our fingertips. All of these things that we can do. It just makes sense. It's just smart, and it doesn't make sense to me why we're not doing that. Anyway, at this point, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with Chris Rockhold.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
All right, we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. The number of the show, if you want to join the conversation, is 619-924-0986. Again, that is 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. All right, at this point, I'm going to be joined by our special guest, Chris Rockhold from the Libertarian Party. He's running in District 17, Position 2. Are you there, Chris?
Yes, I am, Mack. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime. So, the very first thing that I wanted to ask you about is what's your take on what's going on in Crimea and how Obama is reacting?
Oh man, that's I haven't been following that as closely as I probably should be the past week or so here. We have to be really careful as a country that we don't look like a power that is making a lot of threats and gesturing and posturing and then doing nothing. Instead, we should be encouraging negotiation. We should be encouraging talks in that region. I just hate to see Obama make a bunch of promises to go in militarily and then either go in militarily and then look like we're doing more of the same empire building that we've been doing, or not do anything, and that's not good either. So why don't we go in there and try to resolve this with negotiating? Have somebody talk to Putin, have somebody go in and talk to the folks in Crimea and try and sort this out. That would be my approach. But that doesn't really have a whole lot of effect, though, on what the issues that I'm working on here in Washington State. There's not a whole lot you can do as a Washington State legislator with that issue, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I understand, absolutely. And I know it doesn't necessarily pertain to you, but I was just curious what your thoughts on it and stuff, especially being a libertarian. You know, I know one aspect of libertarianism, at least certain libertarians anyway, believe that you know, any kind of force is any kind of like coercive force that you put on anyone is something that's illegitimate, basically. So. So
well,
anyway, I was just curious what your thoughts.
What you have to look at, though, is making sure that we're not. Why are we using force? You know, is it because we're being attacked directly? Is it because one of our allies, somebody that we have agreed to help defend, is being attacked directly? So many times we use force in the presumption of our national defense, and it's not really our national defense. It's our national interests or interests of certain groups in America, and that's why we're going in and meddling in affairs that really don't have anything to do with us. And so that's what I want to make sure, that we're not doing more of that type of intervention. If it's something where a country that we're allied with is saying, hey, look, we're under a threat of being attacked, and we have an agreement with them to help provide for their defense, you know, that's one thing. But to say, well, we're going to go in because it suits our interests, that's the kind of activity that I would not support.
Absolutely. And I don't think that anybody really wants a war with Russia, and I think Russia knows that. I think Russia thinks that, you know, people in America are war weary. You know, we've been fighting for years now, and we're tired of it, and we absolutely don't want another war. And I made the comparison, you know, a few episodes ago when I was talking about how we were in this state before. I feel like, for me, history seems to be repeating. It seems like, you know, we're following the same cycles that we were back before World War II. And basically, let me give you an example here. You know, we just got out of World War I, and we didn't want to basically get involved in what Hitler was doing in Europe. And we thought it was their business, and we wanted to be isolationist of sort, basically. And because of that, we got kind of blindsided with this attack in Pearl Harbor, and with that, you know, it brought us into the war. At that time, we were also, there's a lot of other stuff that was going on that's kind of parallel. Nazi Germany, they had just recently hosted the Olympics. Now we see that Russia's hosted the Olympics just recently. And I find it a little funny, too, because in the 1920s, they had the prohibition of alcohol. And this kind of segues into what you and I are about to talk about here, is prohibition of marijuana. And basically the battle that's going on right now with that. But I find it very funny that we see very, you know, similar situations, you know, from history, kind of following the cycle. And I'm not sure if we're repeating it, if we're heading into a third world war. I hope not, but I just thought it was funny to point out. But anyway, I'd like to move on to the next thing here, obviously. Chris, first of all, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and you know, give an idea as to why they should vote for you here.
Oh, certainly, Mack. Yeah, I presently work for a company based in Portland that flies for FedEx, and I'm a pilot. And one of the things that I do as a pilot is, you know, you deal with a lot of contingencies and other, you know, in the air that you have to worry about, things like that. And so that experience, I think, you know, not to mention that you have to deal with changing conditions and deal with the sometimes demanding schedules, and so that's the kind of experience that I'd like to put to work in Olympia. But not just that, I'm a concerned citizen. You know, I'm not just running. I'm not another politician. What I want to do is I want to fix a lot of the problems in Olympia that I see. You know, like corporate cronyism. You know, corporations. This notion that corporations can be treated as people, and as such, they can make contributions to campaigns as though they were individuals. I think it just flies in the face of our republic, the system that we have, and it's not, you know, it just lends itself to this corporate crony environment where now we have corporations that just pump money into our political system, and campaigns can be won with millions of dollars on one side or the other, depending on which companies are funding your campaign. Yeah, I'm not taking any campaigns, donations from giant corporations. I'm looking for campaign donations from individual voters, concerned citizens like you or me, people, normal people, everyday people. And so I'm kind of like the Mr. Smith goes to Washington kind of candidate. I'm not a career politician, but what I do want to do is roll back a lot of bad legislation. I'm not in a hurry to introduce a lot of new legislation, but I do want to change a lot of the bad or stop a lot of bad legislation.
Absolutely. I think that's actually the difference between, let's say, libertarians and liberals, for example. I think that a lot of liberals are in a hurry to get legislation out there. They want to put more and more legislation on the books in a lot of cases, get it under the radar, pass it without, any opposition, basically. But, from what I hear about libertarians, and I like what you said as far as, trying to get bad laws out of there. It's less about creating more laws, but more about getting bad laws gone.
Right. Well, I think legislators, they get elected, and they're in such a hurry to pass legislation to get their name out there or get some recognition, and they throw something at the wall until it sticks, and they're just looking for that piece of legislation to get that recognition. And it's not about writing more bills. We have plenty of bills. I mean, you think about before World War I, how many pieces of legislation were passed in the U.S. It was federal legislation. There were very few pieces of federal legislation. And then between World War I and World War II, there was a few hundred pieces. And then you look at World War II to the 1980s, there were several thousand pieces of federal legislation. So now it's like every time you turn around, there are hundreds of thousands of bills going through the U.S. Congress. It's insane. Why do we need more regulation? We have a lot of laws on the books to handle a lot of these new pieces of legislation already, and they're just such a reactionary nature to the legislative branch. Anything that happens, we got to pass a new law. We have to take care of these imaginary problems that don't exist. When if we just let the free market take care of it, we wouldn't need all this extra burdensome legislation. And for Pelosi to say when the ACA came out, well, we have to pass it to know what's in it. That was completely absurd. I mean, how many times have you been asked to sign a contract and you say, well, we can't read it until after you sign it? I mean, that
just doesn't happen, and nobody would do that. But hey, I actually have the clip here from Nancy Pelosi saying that here. I'll go ahead and play it real fast. It's just a few seconds.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it away from the fog of the controversy.
So with that said, Chris, I have a listener here that wants me to ask you a question. What legislation do you feel needs to be rolled back, as you just said, and what stance does the incumbent take on hot-button issues that you oppose?
Well, one of the bills that I know is really hot right now, it's going through the Washington State. One of the things I'd love to roll back is, we passed a bill last November to give Boeing $18.5 million. And this is not Boeing tax breaks. This is $18.5 million out of the Washington State fund, the general fund, to help retrain Boeing incumbent workers on how to build this new composite wing that they want to build. So $18.5 million to build new educational facilities, to retrain their sheet metal workers or their composite wing workers up there. And the guy that I'm running for voted for it. And it's insane to me when the Washington State Constitution, first of all, specifically says you cannot pass a law to favor one business over another. You can't do that. And the other thing that they did that's against the Washington State Constitution, they passed tax legislation during a special session. You're also not supposed to do that according to the Washington State Constitution. So that's, one thing I would love to see, where we're not giving money to corporations to try and, to pacify corporations that they say, well, we're going to take our toys and we're going to go to another state. So you better give us some money or you better help us retrain our employees. Boeing made $59 billion last year. We don't know what they paid in taxes because in Washington State you're not required to report your taxes in a manner where you just pull them up and see them. So Microsoft, Boeing, whoever, you'll never know what they pay in taxes because they don't release that information. So that's one place I'd love to start is with all these favoritism bills.
Yeah, and I can agree with you on that. You know, one thing though, and I'll go ahead and play devil's advocate here. It's going to cost jobs. So what do you say to the people that argue, if Boeing leaves, we lose jobs, and you're going to, it's already hard enough out here as it is. What do you answer to that?
Right. Well, first of all, to say that we have to give one company a favored status or give them tax breaks, which flies in the face of the Washington State Constitution in the name of jobs, I don't agree with that. And for the other thing, Mac, I mean, you're looking at $8.7 billion. I mean, that's what we gave Boeing for the next 26 years in operating taxes. I understand that they play on that fear. Well, we could lose those jobs. Well, how about we do this? How about we give all of our businesses in the state, the small businesses and a lot of the other businesses, tax breaks as well? Why don't we cut through the red tape and help support them and not just the giant corporations that threaten to pull out and go somewhere? Why don't we make Washington State in general a better place to do business? That's what I would like to see happen. So rather than this favoritism, for one giant company, let's give all the businesses in Washington State breaks.
And I think that's a good answer to that. As far as other people's concerns, because some of our surrounding states actually are allowed to have these kind of crony capitalist deals and they're prepared, in other places around the country, are prepared to offer Boeing, the same kind of deal, that we're offering them now to move. So what's your answer to that? What do you think that the risk is that we'll lose Boeing? And if so, what are your thoughts?
Well, Boeing is already constructing facilities in South Carolina. I mean, those facilities are being built there, in spite of the fact that Boeing said that they, would like to. They said, well, we would like to stay in Washington, but they threatened to move. They have, as far as I can see, what I've read, they haven't promised the state of Washington. They haven't signed a contract. They haven't said, well, of course we're going to stay if we get these breaks. There's no guarantee that they could still pull out. Even when the union was voting, Washington State said, okay, we're going to give you these tax breaks, and the union had to vote whether or not they wanted to accept their contract. And Boeing said, if you don't accept this contract, well, then we're going to pull out even in spite of all these breaks. So what is Washington State? What are the taxpayers of Washington State getting for their side of their end of the bargain? It doesn't feel like they're getting anything.
Yeah, and I think it's true as far as what you said. As far as they're not even signing a contract or anything, so they could get these tax breaks and just take off and go anyway. So there's no guarantee that they're going to stick around. And we're supposed to give them billions of our dollars. And I think the most important point that you've made is the fact that it's directly against the Washington State Constitution to pass these laws, yet they're passed already. And my question to you, my next question would be, would you support any kind of impeachment process for people who voted for this legislation?
Well, of course we have that process here in Washington that we can recall elected officials. I don't think that's necessary. I think we can certainly vote them out. It was an overwhelming majority, unfortunately, that supported the tax breaks for Boeing. And, regardless of the fact that it was unconstitutional. So I think individual voters should look at these issues and decide that they vote either to vote to repeal these folks or you just vote them out. We need new candidates. We have 18 candidates here in Washington State running on the Libertarian ticket. So, I think I don't think at this point running a massive recall or campaign to impeach folks is the answer at this point. It'd be nice if there was some process where we could say, hey, look, you violated the Constitution. We should worry about the law and not the legislators overturning the laws that are unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, okay. So as far as that issue, we understand where you come from. So, is there any other issues that you disagree with the incumbent on?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, there are. We just had this legislation that they were trying to pass for the medical marijuana, which would severely restrict the medical marijuana here in Washington State. And the voters have decided, that that's something that's important to them. And the gentleman I'm running against voted in favor of a bill that did not pass, but he voted in favor of a bill that would cut the number of plants that you could own down to 6 plants that you could grow yourself, and the amount of marijuana that you could possess down to 3 ounces of medical marijuana, even if with a medical marijuana card. So it would severely restrict medical marijuana usage, and it hurts folks that depend on marijuana to help them with their ailments. And I believe that it is a real treatment. Some people would argue that, it's not really a medical treatment. Well, lots of people that use it as a treatment would disagree with you, I think. People that use it for all kinds of conditions, for epileptic seizures or for severe anxiety. I mean, there's a lot of conditions that marijuana has been shown to provide real benefit.
Okay, and as far as your take on medical marijuana, you absolutely support it, and you would vote any legislation to help have actual medical marijuana be easier to obtain for citizens. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The Libertarian stand is that my body or our body, Mack, is ours. It's not run by the state. So the state really has no standing, as far as the Libertarian is concerned, over what I can or cannot choose to put in my body. Where Libertarians draw the line is, are you harming someone else? Now, in the harm or violating of someone else's rights, that's where the issue is, not in what you decide to put into your body. So you should have the right to have authority over your own person, your own self. We see it all the time. We see them start with drugs, and they say, well, you can't do this drug or that drug. And so if you do, we're going to throw you in jail. Or now in New York, you can't buy a 32-ounce soda. You can't. It just goes on and on, where we've become this nanny state where we have to take away the individual's rights in the name of what? Health. We're going to try and make people become more healthy through coercion. That's where I have a problem with that.
So with that said, do you support the legalization of marijuana just for recreational use?
Absolutely, I certainly do. Now we say, well, if you legalize marijuana, everybody's going to go out and smoke marijuana. No, that's not entirely true, because I can tell you, I've actually never tried marijuana. I don't smoke it. I don't plan to. But lots of people have tried it. You talk to anybody on the street and you say, well, have you ever tried marijuana? Well, yeah, I've tried marijuana. Well, you realize it's illegal, right? Oh, yeah, I don't care if it's illegal. So in all the years that we've made drugs illegal, has that stopped drug use? No, it hasn't. Now, you take a look at Washington State's prison system, right? This is something I'm very familiar with. Washington State, roughly 8.3% of the Washington State prison population is due to drug crimes. So what that means, Mack, is that we're spending about $100,000 a day. That's a conservative figure. The exact numbers, can't locate but it depends on minimum institutions versus maximum institutions. But the bottom figure, the minimum figure, is about $100,000 a day for that 8.3% of our prison population that are in prison simply for what they call drug crimes, for possession, right? So you get pulled over, you say, well, I've got something on your person, marijuana or whatever, and so we're going to throw you in jail, we're going to lock you up. Well, has that solved all the money and all the time we spent on the war on drugs? Has that solved the problem of people taking drugs and having issues with that? No, it hasn't, but it has created a prison population which we have to lock them up for no other crime other than hurting themselves or harming themselves. So that's what I call a victimless crime, which means the only victim here, when you lock somebody up for possession, was the person that was taking the drug. So how can you have a crime when the only victim is himself or herself?
And actually, he's made more of a victim by putting him in prison. So if your whole philosophy is to prevent people from ruining their lives and getting on drugs, well, why? I don't understand the whole answer to that is ruining their lives by throwing them in jail. So, and not only that, but putting them on the taxpayer dime, which I think is the most important point to point out there, is that now we're supposed to pay for these guys. And not only that, I mean, I could talk about the prison industrial complex all freaking day, because I have a fundamental disagreement when you start creating a monetary demand for prisoners from these prisons.
Yes.
You know, they get paid per prisoner that they take care of, obviously. So it behooves them to have more prisoners. So they go out and, like you were saying, you know, crony capitalism, they go out and support candidates who support these kind of laws that put more prisoners in jail. And you know, and obviously, you know, the situation just keeps repeating itself. It's a big cycle, and you know, these politicians create laws that create more prisoners. These companies get more money so they can pump back into their elected officials, and it's just a big cycle of corruption like this. And I personally, I'll never understand the whole, you know, you're going to ruin your life, stay off drugs, and if you get on them, we're going to ruin your life and throw you in jail.
Right. Absolutely. And you were talking too about passing laws in order to earn more money. You look at a lot of these laws that are written, like seatbelt laws, right? On the surface, sounds like a great idea, right? If you're not wearing a seatbelt, we're going to give you a ticket. Well, so then what cops do? Well, they're focused not on so much protection and serving the public. Now they're worried about writing tickets so they can generate revenue. So what's the greatest way to generate revenue? Well, look for people without seatbelts, right? So we look around, we see people without seatbelts, and we write them tickets. Why? Because tickets earn revenue for whatever community that they're in. So whether it's the county or the state, if you're talking about state patrol, or you're talking about, you know, local municipalities. So that's, you know, we've gotten away from the police being there to protect and to respond to real crimes, and now they're out looking for ways to generate revenue and write tickets. You know, cell phone tickets. There's another fun one. So, you know, looking around to find people on their cell phone or without hands-free so we can pull them over and give them a ticket. Well, does that make anybody, you know, safer? I mean, if somebody gets into an accident, then that's the issue. It's not whether or not they're distracted. It's about what if they cause a problem. You know, that's not, you can't prevent all problems. You can't say to somebody, well, okay, you can't drive on your cell phone. Now we're going to say, well, you can't drive with kids in your car, because kids are very distracting when you're driving, right? Or pets. Yeah. Let's go with that. Let's talk about dogs. You know, if you have a dog in your lap, or a dog in the back seat, you know, or you have the radio too loud, or, you know, a lot of things can be distracting. Or if you're eating, you know, how many times have you gone through a drive-through and grabbed a burger, you know, and now you're eating on the run? You know, there are lots of things that are bad ideas, but we don't pass laws telling you can't do any of them. You know,
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's it. I was done.
Yeah, well, you know, I understand where you're coming from, and I typically do agree. I don't think that the government should be involved, especially when it's something that affects you, like, for example, a seatbelt. A seatbelt, there's no one affected by you except maybe an innocent bystander that got hit by your body flying out of the car or something like that. But you know, it's as far as like, you know, texting and driving and stuff like that, I can kind of see, you know, where they can get public support on that. It's you know, I think that drunk driving obviously should be against the law, because, you know, or impaired driving, things like that, because, I mean, you at that point are putting other people at risk. I think that's where I'm going to differ. I don't know if that's a Libertarian Party standpoint or not, but you know, I do understand certain common sense things, and I hate using that word, by the way, because that I take that back. I hate it when people say common sense measures, because that's like a liberal argument right there. But you know, as far as putting other people at risk, you know, there's certain things that I agree with, and there's certain things that I don't. But I think that when you start getting to the point of where it's like, all right, you got to wear a seatbelt because it protects you, and we know what's better for you than you do, then you have to listen to us. You have to follow our rules, or we're going to punish you. I disagree with that, and I agree that it does create this big revenue machine. I want to kind of pivot on the subject here a little bit. What are your thoughts on how there has been some discrimination in terms of people who are on medical marijuana when they try to get firearms? Do you think that people who are on medical marijuana should have, or even recreational marijuana for that matter, should have their right to bear arms taken away?
Well, no. That's the first time I've heard about an issue with people with medical marijuana being denied the ability to carry firearms. I mean, that's absurd. We have laws that say if you're a convicted felon, you can't own firearms. But why would you restrict someone from having a firearm when they have a medical marijuana card? I don't see the connection there at all. Is that implying that somebody who uses marijuana can't be a responsible gun owner? I guess I don't see. That seems like kind of a leap there in my mind. No, but a responsible gun owner. Is that what you're talking about, Mack? Like you're saying
well, I personally disagree with it. I'm not saying that I support that.
I disagree too, but I'm trying to get from you here what the argument is that the other side is making here, that somehow that someone who has a medical marijuana card or uses medical marijuana somehow cannot own a firearm because they're not a responsible gun or something to that extent.
I think that's probably the argument that they're trying to make is that, and again, what I've researched on this, I've heard a couple news articles about it where a woman was denied because she applied for her medical marijuana card, got it, and then she went to get her firearm and she wasn't allowed to. At least that's what I remember from the article I read. So, my thoughts on this obviously is, I think that they're assuming that you're walking around high all day and you'd be a danger to the public or something. But first of all, I disagree, because anybody who's willing to go through the process to get a medical marijuana card, that person is obviously a responsible person to begin with, because they could just be smoking it illegally or, doing it without the government's approval already. So that person's obviously responsible. And the fact that they're trying to go about getting a firearm the legal and legitimate way, that just shows their responsibility again. So I think, hands down, this is a kind of a messed up thing to do to people. You're trying to violate their rights simply because of the kind of medicine that they're on. And in my opinion, it's a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, because you're not allowed to discriminate against people who have disabilities, and that's just discrimination based on the kind of medicine they're on. So would you agree with that?
Well, that's what it sounds like to me. I haven't heard of that. People being denied. You mean like they would go into a gun store to buy a weapon and they would do a background check and find out they have a medical marijuana card? Was that kind of the gist of the article you were talking about?
That's what I mean.
Well, the other thing that bugs me too, Mack, is that when you go to I don't know if you've seen this, where you go to a doctor's office, and part of the questionnaire that they give you now will ask you, do you have a firearm in the house? And have you seen this? Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen this.
As far as I'm concerned, it's nobody's darn, I don't want to swear here while I'm on the radio, but it's nobody's darn business whether I have a firearm in my house or not. And for me to go to the doctor and say, well, we're required to ask you this question, is utter nonsense. It has nothing to do with the care that I'm receiving at that doctor. So why are they asking this question? They're trying to get a record of who owns guns and who doesn't, so we know where to come into their house and relieve them of their guns, which is also relieving them of their constitutional right and relieving them of due process. But, that's where it starts, right? We have to get a registry on who has the guns. And I guess that's how the government's trying to do that with these stupid questions when you go to the doctor. But it's absurd. I don't even answer that question. If I see that on a form, do you own guns in your house? It's none of their business. I don't have to answer that question. It's not their right to know when I go to the doctor whether or not I have guns or not. I mean, what does that have to do with medical care? But it's the government's. We've more way for them to try and keep track of who's armed and who isn't. So.
Yeah, well, we've seen Obamacare, how they're trying to basically nationalize a database of all of our medical records here. So, anybody in the country, any doctor in the country can see your medical history and whatnot. So, putting that in there, that's in my opinion, that's a backdoor gun registration. And I totally agree with you. I think that it's a real scary thought to think that our government is slowly compiling a database of who the gun owners are, who the troublemakers are, or whatever. And that's a scary thought, it's especially in terms of Obamacare, because it's this big conglomerate on a federal scale. It's not even just like, your local doctor's office. They're putting these things into databases now so people can, access them from other locations. So, yeah, what's your thoughts on Obamacare?
Oh, man, what a mess that thing is. Just look at Oregon. My God, how much money they've wasted on their program in Oregon. And they have gotten absolutely nothing other than changing the name of the Rose Garden to the Moda Center. But every place I talk to, every doctor's office, every private practice I talk to says, we're going to be out of business next year or the year after. I was just at my chiropractor last week, and my chiropractor said, I'm not going to be able to afford to stay in business next year. I'm going to be done. Next year I'll be operating at a loss of probably about $100,000. And that just astounded me because of all the changes and rules that they're making under Obamacare. For example, like chiropractic care, it used to be in Washington State you could go to a chiropractor under the heading of back pain. So you have back pain, which will then you could go to a chiropractor, you could go to an orthopedic person, you could go to a regular doctor. But now they're changing all the rules. See, so you have to now when you say back pain, well, I've got back pain. Now you have to go to your regular doctor. And you have to get a referral to a specialist, which who may or may not approve, this course of action. And so then when they do approve it, they say, well, you're approved for this many visits within this certain time frame. And if you don't get all of them done within that time frame, well, that's too bad. We did approve them, but you didn't get all your treatment that we approved. So there's just so many rules, and people don't even know whether or not they're following the rules. That's the biggest problem. I mean, how many pages, Mack, were in the ACA? I mean, just in the law. I mean, it was reams of paper.
I think it was 21,000 pages total. 21,000.
How in the world can you possibly know whether or not you're even in compliance with all that? I mean, you have to hire teams of specialists just to interpret all the rules to figure out whether or not you're following them. And that's the problem with this country, is we've become this country of gigantic, books and volumes of these rules, when really it should be very simple. It should just be very simple. It should be just a matter of, I have a doctor, they're a good doctor or they're not. If they're not a good doctor, well then let's talk about what we can do, as far as that goes. But now these rules, my God, they're just burying these private practice folks with an incredible burden. And you watch. I'm telling you, people are not getting into the medical profession because it's gone out of control. It
used to be, you could go to college, you put in your time and your energy, get your doctorate degree, and go be a doctor and make a lot of money. It used to be where you could count on you're going to be able to pay off your student loans because you're going to make a lot of money as a doctor. Not anymore. Right. I wouldn't recommend going into the medical field. If I had a kid nowadays and they were looking at going into medicine, I'd suggest that they find something else. Honestly, it may be a good idea to be a lawyer instead of a doctor. But because we're a litigious society now, so there'll always be lawyers and they'll probably always be making money. So, but it's not a good idea anymore to be a doctor. You can't count on that. Basically earn the money back that you even just spent in student loans. But anyway, we got to cut to a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more with Chris Rockhold in a few moments. Stick with us.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate you guys sticking with us. All right, we have Chris Rockhold on the line from the Libertarian Party. He's running for District 17, Position 2. And if you would like to join the conversation, the number of the show today is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. All right, Chris, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so first things first, I just want to give you an opportunity here to talk about your campaign, where people can go to find out more information about you, and how can they get involved? How can they help? Because I know as a Libertarian, you guys need as many different people knocking on doors as possible because you're, a smaller third party with not the name recognition, or, people can't just go down the party line of Republican or Democrat and just check the box. So how can people help you out?
Well, right. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, we don't have the giant machine behind us that the Republicans and the Democrats have as far as the fundraising and that and so forth. So what I have my own website. It's chrisrockhold.com. That's Chris and then ROCKHOLD.com. And you can go there. You can make a donation. That's the biggest thing. It costs a lot of money to run a campaign. The guy that I'm running against spent over $100,000 last go around for this seat, and it's kind of surprising people spend $100,000 for a seat that pays $46,000 a year. But one of the things that I really want to do is I want to get $10 donations from as many people as I can. And you think $10 doesn't sound like a lot of money, a couple of cups of coffee at Starbucks or something like that. But that's what I'm really looking for, is lots and lots of people who are concerned about losing their liberties and are concerned about the direction government is headed, and say, well, look, I can donate $10. I mean, that's not a big deal. So if you go to chrisrockhold.com, there's a spot there. You can donate. I call it the Donate 10 button, and you can just click, and it takes you to PayPal, and $10. And I'm not taking any money from corporations or unions. I've gotten several emails, unions saying, well, if you'd like our support, just send us a letter. We'll consider giving you a donation. I said thanks, but no thanks. I'm not looking for union money or corporate money. I don't want to. This is a grassroots movement. That's as many $10 donors as I can get, and that really goes a long way to supporting the campaign. For people that want to volunteer, yeah, absolutely, we need volunteers, people to help get the word out. Canvassing with the door-to-door activity, that kind of thing, or people who are willing to call on the phone, or anybody who has a talent that they think would help political campaign. Research, that's another big one. I try to read up as much as I can on certain issues, but I cannot read up on everything that's important to everybody. So research is another big one. And so anybody who's interested in doing that, if they could either add me on their Facebook page. I also have a Facebook page as well. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Or there's a space on the web page where you can volunteer. There's a volunteer button there. You can click it, type in specifically what you'd like to help with, and then I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, well that's awesome. So I hope that people take the time to go check out your webpage, chrisrockhold.com. Take a look at some of his other issues that he has on there, other than stuff that we've already talked about. I really like Chris. I met you at a Libertarian Party meeting, which, by the way, everyone, I am not a Libertarian with a capital L. I'm a conservative Libertarian, so there may be some differences in political beliefs as far as Libertarian Party, but I'm trying to learn more about it. And one question I had about this, Chris, I wanted to ask you. From what I've noticed, most people don't just start out as libertarians. Most libertarians actually didn't even know what libertarianism was until they just ran into it and fell into it. So I wanted to ask you first, what were you before you were a libertarian, if anything, and what made you make the change?
Well, it's interesting you should ask me that question. My father has been a libertarian, I would say, since the late 70s, because the Libertarian Party has been around since the mid-70s. I believe it was 1976, if I'm not mistaken, when the Libertarian Party was first formed. But that was something that appealed to my father. And then when I was in high school, I graduated high school in 1988, the Libertarian Party already appealed to me by then. And I actually voted, the first time I turned 18 and was able to vote, I voted for Ron Paul as a Libertarian. So the Libertarian Party and policy has always kind of spoke to me. It always made sense to me. Get back to the Constitution, maximize liberty, smaller government, less regulation, less taxes, let the free markets decide. So many of those issues, it just rang true to me. And I personally believe that if you were to talk to people at large, and I think 60% of the population would identify with a lot of the libertarian values, but they just don't know it yet. If you go to there's a great website. It's called I Side With, ISIDEWITH, and if you go to that website, you can take this quiz that they have, and at the end of the quiz it says, well, I score 90% with these people or 80% with those folks, and they have all the parties on there. They have obviously Democrat, Republican, and then they go Libertarian, Green Party, Constitution Party, and so forth. And so I went on there and I did this test, and I find that most of the time I side with Libertarian Party as a rule. There's a couple of differences, and one of them that I'd like to point out is the national park system. I love the fact that we have national parks. I think Teddy Roosevelt did a wonderful service to this country when he started the national park system. That's not really one of the things that libertarians per se would support, because you're taking money and you're spending on a public program that, while on the surface it seems nice, and these parks, that's not something that a pure libertarian might support. But it's one of those things where I say, well, you know what? We have the national park system. It's a wonderful thing that we're preserving these national treasures, these natural landscapes. I like the idea personally, but you can go on there and you can take that test and kind of see, if you're more libertarian or more, Democrat, Republican, Green Party, and so forth. So I've
actually been on that website. I took that test and I was like 90-some% libertarian. But one area where I was in disagreement with them is as far as illegal immigration, deportation, things like that. Mm-hmm. I believe that if you're here illegally, you should be deported. If you're not a citizen of the United States and you didn't come in the right way, we should deport you. Mm-hmm. That's maybe I'm a little cold-hearted in that regard, but that's the way I feel. I can't help the way I feel. And one thing I'd like to ask you, Chris, there's this law going on down in Oregon that there's talk of giving illegals driver's licenses so that they are more inclined to get insurance, and even though you don't necessarily have to have insurance in order to get a driver's license in order to get insurance. So my question to you is, what are your thoughts if a similar law was trying to be passed here in Washington, giving the ability of illegal immigrants to get a driver's license or some kind of documentation proving that they're allowed to drive even though they're not a citizen?
Well, it's interesting you should bring that up, because I was just talking with someone the other day who was telling me that if you call the Washington State DOL and you ask them, do you give driver's license to illegals? And basically he asked that question in a roundabout way. Whoever he was talking to said, well, we do actually do that. Not as policy, but they don't scrutinize, verify the Social Security numbers versus, what they're given. Now, whether that actually happens, I haven't confirmed that. So I'm just telling you a story that somebody relayed to me. But if that's going on, if Washington State is issuing licenses without verifying the status of people, whether or not they're here legally, absolutely not. I don't approve of that at all. We should quit. You talk about deporting people. I don't feel we need to deport people, but we do absolutely need to stop making it comfortable for them to be here or encouraging them to break the law to get here. I want to see people immigrate legally to the United States. I'm all in favor of that. We are a nation of immigrants. My grandparents immigrated here from Italy, and they came over to Ellis Island, and they learned English, and they did everything they needed to do to immigrate legally. But now we're saying to a group of people, well, it's okay if however you get here, we're going to give you the benefits. We don't really care. We're going to look the other way. If you want a driver's license, or here's another. You were talking about earlier about things that my opponent has voted for. Do you remember the DREAM Act, Mack, back here a little over a year ago, where they said, okay, we have kids that are here illegally from illegal parents, and they've been brought up in the United States. They weren't born in the U.S., but they were brought up here, and so we send them to school. We pay for that from kindergarten all the way through high school, and then they said, well, now we have to give them in-state tuition rates. They're still not legal here. They're still not citizens, but we have to give them in-state rate for college because they are here, and, well, we did educate them. And then the DREAM Act said, well, that wasn't good enough. Now we're going to give them, access to Pell Grants, student loans, and other things other resources that the states pay for. It's absurd. Where did we draw the line? These folks are not following the law. Either you follow the law or you don't. If you're going to come here, do it legally. Just because you ended up here and now you're here to say, well, we're going to go ahead and give you a driver's license because, well, we want to go ahead and make sure that you're following the. Well, if you're following the rules, you're not here. You're back where you came from, and then you begin the immigration process to come here legally, or you get a visa and you come here legally with a visa, and so there's a process for that. But to say, well, we're going to look the other way, we're going to give you a driver's license, it legitimizes the law breaking. That's what it does. So you give a driver's license to someone, it legitimizes their existence here. Now it's one more step. Now they have an ID. Now they're applying for services. They're getting Social Security, and they're not paying into that.
Okay,
and they're not here.
You don't agree with deporting them, though. What's your answer if they're here illegally and they're caught, and we now know that they're here illegally violating the law? What do you recommend doing if it's not deporting? Then what?
So when you say caught, do you mean we catch them in the act of a crime? Or I mean, if you're saying this that somebody here illegally and they're committing crime and they're getting thrown in jail, then yeah, send those people back and say you're not welcome back here anymore. I mean, take them out of a prison, send them back to wherever they came from, and then say you're not welcome in the United States anymore. And that's we shut the door to those people.
I understand that, and I'm not saying, and I'm not recommending that we have some kind of task force that's trying to investigate and find illegals or anything like that. If we find them by accident or by them committing a crime or somehow or by a anonymous tip or something that somebody is, or numerous other ways that we could find them. I think that if they're found and discovered that they are illegal, they're in violation of the law. Which is a crime, obviously, so they need to be deported. And I don't think that our prison system, again, needs anybody else in there, not drug offenders. I don't think it needs illegal immigrants in there. We need to get them out. And definitely, I totally disagree with rewarding immigrants who came here illegally while we have people that are on a list that have been waiting for a decade, or more, trying to get through to do it the right way, and actually, most importantly, learn our language. That right there is got to be the most important process of our immigration is to actually have them learn the English language before they can become a citizen. That just makes sense to me. So, with that said, I kind of understand where you and we're kind of similar on that topic. I don't think that we need to actually actively seek them out or anything like that. But if we get a tip or if we catch them in the act of a crime, I think that we should deport them. So what are your thoughts? Should we deport them then?
Well, yeah, definitely. If they're caught committing crime, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this, but 2.5%, 2.5% of our Washington State, that's just Washington State prison population, are citizens from Mexico. That's their citizenship. So those are the folks that we are incarcerating that are here. They're not here. They don't have citizenship in the United States, and so we those people go back. We ship them back, and we say you're not welcome here anymore. Just you go back to your home country. And you're not, goodbye. We say goodbye to those people. They're not welcome back in the United States. So what we have to do, we have to quit making it comfortable for these folks to be here. So we have a very simple system that you can call and verify. So security, I don't understand why more people aren't using the system. The E-Verify, you've heard of that program, right? Where it's just very simple. You compare the name of the Social Security number that they give you to the database, right? And if things don't match up, if they're using the database of somebody or a Social Security number of somebody who's no longer living, or they're using a Social Security number that doesn't match the name, in the database, you can't hire those people. You can't, you're not supposed to hire them. And if people can't get jobs here and they don't get the benefits here, if they can't collect Social Security or any of the other benefits here, then they will go home because there's nothing for them here.
Yeah, I agree with you on that for sure. One thing I kind of would like to bring it back a little bit here. I know we were talking about the national parks, and I know you were saying that the Libertarian Party typically does disagree with you, and this is one situation. I like it that we don't agree on everything exactly, because it actually gives us a better conversation than us saying, like, I totally agree with you, Chris, or I totally agree with you, Mac. Now we can actually have debate, and that's what it's about. So as far as my stance on the national park system, okay, do I think that the national parks are great? Yes, absolutely. Have I enjoyed them when I've gone? Yes, I have absolutely enjoyed them. But I don't think that we need the government to monitor these lands, and especially the fact that the government mismanages these lands because it doesn't belong to them. Nobody is going to take care of a piece of property like the person that owns it. And the federal government, managed by federal employees, they don't have that ownership feeling like it's theirs. So we see our forest just in a total state of disarray. We got wildfires spreading like crazy because they're a tinderbox, and it's because they're being mismanaged. And in certain areas, like I think in Oregon, I keep talking about Oregon. Just I'm right next to them. So, but in Oregon,
I know, you can't help it.
Yeah. But I feel like I got a Portland shadow looming over me at all times. But in Oregon, they actually have really restricted harvesting wood on federal land, it's really damaged the logging industry down there. And on top of which, the most important part is that these forests are now just in like a huge state of disarray. These a spark could just set off a few 100-acre fire, like thousands of acres fire really quickly, and it's dangerous. It's not only just I think it's not smart to let the government mismanage things, but I think it's dangerous in this circumstance. And if there's a demand for these forests to be visited, which there is, people go visit these forests and spend time, spend money in there, then we can commercialize it, have people make money off of it in a private company. I think that's a good thing, and I think that they'll do it better than the government ever could.
You raise a very good point there, and to which I was speaking just specifically to the national parks, like Grand Canyon, the Grand Canyon. You look at that and you just say, wow, that is just something that is worth preserving. It's one of the the 7 wonders of the world. And then to say, well, if private interests want to buy it and put a uranium mine in the middle of the Grand Canyon, I don't think that's such a great. Believe me, I'm a free market guy. I love the idea of true competition and land ownership, but there's just some things that you just would hate to see go away. There's certain landmarks, there's certain treasures that we have in this country that I would just hate to see disappear, like the Grand Canyon. So, it's tough for me. I know as a free market person, like you say, you argue that people can manage land much better than the government. I completely agree with that statement. You bet. And the other thing I hate to see is the government grab more land. We say, well, the government's going to take this land from you and this land from you, and you can't build here, and you can't log this, and you can't do that. And the government's telling us what we can even do with our own land. You own so many acres of forest, and you say the government comes in and says, well, you can't log all that. You can only log this little part of it. You can chop down these 5 trees, but these, 300 trees over here, you have to leave those alone. And it's absurd. There's no property rights anymore. That you can't, burn ban. You can't even burn your own excess, wood or trees on your own land anymore. You have to get permission from the government to do anything on your own land. You're right. It's gotten out of hand. But yeah, I guess it's just the part of me that does like to get out into nature and enjoy those things, that appreciates going to those places and those parks. So, but yeah, like you said, we disagree. That opens up the debate, and it does make things more interesting rather than just a bunch of yes bots, right, where we say, oh, we all agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I think one thing that I have trouble with, and I think everybody can fall into that trap of saying, like, somebody ought to make a law, you hear
that all the time, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have that thought go by my head every now and then, and I'm like, oh no, get it out, get that thought out of there, because it's really easy to fall back to let the government take control and protect us. But I think the libertarian platform of, like, less government, less regulation, more free market, will actually be the party of the most freedom, allowing us to manage ourselves in a more efficient way, because the government is fraught with inefficiencies. So, but anyway, at this point, we're going to take one more commercial break. We'll be back with more with Chris Rockhold from the Libertarian Party. Don't go away.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
All right, we're back with more of On the Move. If you'd like to join the conversation, the telephone number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. And I'm here with Chris Rockhold of the Libertarian Party. He's running for District 17, Position 2. And basically, we've been talking about a whole bunch of different issues here, Chris. And I wanted to give you some more time here to talk more about yourself. I know we asked, we've talked about the issues a lot. We've talked about marijuana. We've talked about crony capitalism. We've talked about, federalization of lands and things like that, immigration. I don't know if I said that already, but one thing I'd like to ask you, and I ask this question to my guests very frequently, the word patriot has been thrown around, and it almost seems like it's taken this negative annotation to it. So a lot of people will think that it's this negative thing, and I personally wear it as a badge of honor. This is a patriot podcast as far as I'm concerned. So for you, what does it mean to be a patriot?
Well, to me, a patriot is somebody who not only loves their country, upholds the Constitution, who takes a very active role in the process. So we can't just sit around in our homes and expect everything to be fine, the government to take care of us. As a patriot, that's somebody who says, look, I'm willing to speak up and stand up for our liberties, for our essential freedoms, and to me, that's a real patriot. Somebody who's not afraid to say, the government is encroaching on my rights, or somebody. You look at what's happening in Connecticut. To me, the patriots are the ones who are saying, I'm not going to register my guns. It's not constitutional. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to let the government come and take them either. These are people that are patriots. These, because they're standing up against what's wrong. They're standing up for their liberties. And so when you do that, that to me, or is a real patriot. The people who stand up to tyranny, to oppressive government, who speak their mind and say, look, this is wrong, and they come out and they go to a rally, or they call their representative, or they send letters, or they start grassroots campaigns and activism. And there's so many different ways to be a patriot, but when you defend essential individual liberty and you stand up against tyranny and coercion, those people are patriots, and that's what I think of as a patriot.
I'd have to agree with you on that, honestly. All those attributes that you were talking about. It's basically what I think of when I think of our founding fathers. Standing up to tyranny. Doing what's right, even though it may be against the law. But it's well within your right as a human, or now our constitutional rights. I have to agree with you wholeheartedly on that. One question I have, because you mentioned rallies and whatnot. There's a big rally that's going on the 5th of April, and it's going to be in Olympia. I was just curious, are you planning on showing up to that one?
Well, Mack, not only am I showing up, I'm actually scheduled to do about a 10-minute speech at that rally. So, I'll be there. I'll be talking. I'll be getting the crowd fired up and talking about the history of the Second Amendment. Giving your audience here a little glimpse into my speech here there. But I'll be talking about the history of the Second Amendment, where it actually came from in first century England. If you can believe that, that's where all of it got started. So. Wow.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that speech, and it's going to be cool to be there. I'm going to be there myself, by the way. And one thing we haven't talked about fully is firearms and your take on it, specifically in regards to open carry. How do you feel about the open carry of firearms? Do you think that there should be any laws that restrict it or anything like that?
Well, absolutely not. Not only open carry, but what they call constitutional carry, which I know you're familiar with, but concealed carry. If you're legally allowed to have a firearm, you're not a felon, essentially, so you can have a firearm, you should be able to put it anywhere on your person, open carry or concealed carry. You think about criminals, Mack, in this country, that they're not worried about whether it's concealed or not concealed. If they got a firearm, they're not worried about the law either. So when you pass a law that restricts people from doing something, you're only affecting the law-abiding people. So when you say to people, well, now you've got to get a permit, and you can't carry this way, you can't carry this, that only affects the people who are willing to follow the law. And if those people aren't going to be the problem. It's
Absolutely.
not the law-abiding citizen who's going to cause you issues. It's going to be the law breakers. And they don't care about whether they have a permit to carry this or carry that. They're going to break the law regardless. And those are the people that you care about, not law-abiding citizens who want to follow the law anyway. So to pass more laws about how you can carry a firearm or can't carry a firearm, it doesn't affect our security or our safety at all. And because the people who are going to break the law, they don't care about any of that stuff or following any of it. So this notion that you can't carry it here and you can't carry it under your clothes, you can't carry it in a belt, it's absurd. I mean, we don't need any restrictions on how we carry because the law-abiding citizen is going to follow the law.
Absolutely. And I have to agree with that wholeheartedly. As far as especially, when we talk about permits and things like that, I'm a big fan of constitutional carry. I don't think that we should have to, ask for permission to do something that's a right. That doesn't seem like a right to me. If I'm asking your permission to do something, that means that you can tell me no. And if you can tell me no, then that means that it's not a right. So with that in mind, I mean, we got to talk about the whole permit state in general. You have a right to travel, and you have a right to travel on the roads that are common to your time, obviously. If we were in Rome, we'd be taking Roman, roads with made of stone and stuff like that. But we're in America, so we have the right to travel on the road. So, I personally, I don't think that we should have to ask for permission to get a driver's license. That's just my personal opinion on it. And I'm just curious, what's your take on this?
Well, the driver's license, in my opinion, is another way for states to make money, right? They legitimize it and they say, well, they make you take a test and you have to do this vision and you have to. I agree with you. I mean, if you're on the road and you're following the rules of the road, which we establish for the common safety of everyone, where we have traffic lights, we have stop signs, we have those things for a reason because it affects everybody. But when you go to get a driver's license, see, the whole thing is not only to collect more of your money, which they never seem to have. There's no end to the amount of money that they ask from you, right? I mean, it's through all the permits and the fees and everything that you pay for. But it also creates a way to track you, to keep track of who you are, right? So now it's an identification measure and a way to collect more money from you from the state. So, but that's not one of my big issues. I'm not campaigning to end driver's licenses. I mean, I accept that we have them and that they're there, in the real world, the ideal society, we would have the rules, but licenses. While I agree with you on that, it's not something I want to go out and introduce legislation to get rid of driver's licenses. But yes, I do agree with you on that point.
Yeah, well, and I'm not asking you to get out there and and fight that issue. That's just one thing that I feel strongly about. I totally disagree with having to have permits to do something that's a right. And we've been asked in the chat room by a listener, where in the Constitution is the right to travel granted? And in my personal opinion, the Constitution. It specifically, first of all, I don't think it specifically says anything about the right to travel. But secondly, I think that the Constitution is a document that lists and enumerates certain rights that the government cannot violate. But in my personal opinion, I don't think that is what it's limited to. We have human rights, everybody has, and when you think about the Constitution, and I'll relate it to it, if the government can restrict your right to travel, for example, then that means that they can restrict your right to go practice your religion at church, for example. So if they can prevent you from going to church, they can prevent you from practicing your religion, and right there you have a right to religion. So that's where I stand. I don't think that the Constitution even necessarily covers your rights. You have human rights, innate rights that are with you just because you're alive. And I don't think that the Constitution was made to give you these rights. It doesn't give you rights. It just enumerates them and tells you what some of them are that the government can't defeat, can't basically break. So that's my personal opinion, and I just wanted to answer that for the listeners. But anyway. We're going to have to wrap up this segment with Chris here. Chris, I want to give you a chance one more time to plug your website and how anybody else can get involved and all that stuff one more time.
Sure. You can always add me on Facebook. Just a little quick note. Hey, want to help your campaign or like your message. It's Chris Rockhold on Facebook or chrisrockhold.com. You can go on. Just looking for $10 donations. And tell your friends, people who like the idea of championing liberty and smaller government. Just $10 donations from people that are concerned about that, and they can do that directly on the website.
All right. Well, I sure do appreciate you coming on, Chris, and you're welcome on the show anytime. And especially, I look forward to having you back on when you win your election. I hope to see you there, man. And honestly, we need some good legislators. You and I don't agree on everything, but it sounds like we agree, most of the time, especially on the really important stuff. So I appreciate you coming on the show, man. And I hope to see you at the rally on the 5th. So thanks for coming on.
Well, definitely, we'll see you on the 5th, and thanks for having me on, Mack. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
You too. Take care. All right, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with my final thoughts on this, and we're going to wrap things up. So don't go anywhere, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
All right, we're back, and I sure do appreciate you guys sticking with us. All right, what I would like to talk about is marijuana. Let's talk about marijuana. I personally think that marijuana should be legal. I'm against any kind of prohibition that outlaws something that has no victim. As long as all parties are consenting and capable of legally consenting, then I think the government should stay out of it. I think the government has no right to play any moral authority whatsoever, especially considering the fact that no force on earth has killed more people than governments. I feel that the states have the absolute right to make it legal within the states, but my problem is that I think that Obama has once again violated his oath of office by deciding not to enforce marijuana laws. Now, this seems like a contradiction. How can I have a problem with him not enforcing a law that I think is unconstitutional? Well, I think that's because his job is not to enforce laws. It's certainly not to create laws, change laws, or to decide which laws he will enforce, unless perhaps he actually deems it as unconstitutional. However, he hasn't even tried to claim that he thought marijuana laws were unconstitutional. So that would be a hard argument for him to defend himself. This, to me, seems like the same situation that we see Obama changing laws unilaterally within Obamacare that violate the Constitution. I am a staunch opponent of unilateral action taken by any president, no matter the party, which creates laws, changes laws, ignores laws, or otherwise creates a situation of lawlessness. I think it's important that supporters of legalization of marijuana stand up against Obama's unconstitutional acts to not enforce those laws, even if those laws are something that we don't agree with. Now, you may disagree with me, and that's fine. Let me know. Give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email us at talk@onthemoveshow.com. And we got a few minutes left in the show here, so if you want to make a quick point, go ahead and make it, and I'll let you have your say. So, anyway, so one thing that I would like to mention here is well, actually, we have a clip here we're going to go and play, and it's starting the next segment of the show, and we like to call it the Listener Challenge.
I challenge you to a duel. Did you hear that? Sounds like it's time for a challenge. Listener challenge. Listener challenge. Listener challenge. Listener challenge.
All right, this is a segment of the show where I challenge you all to get active, get on the move. So your mission this week, if you choose to accept it, is to join PatriotFB.com. It's a Facebook for Patriots. PatriotFB.com is a news site that was created by Jeff Norton of the Midnight Patriot podcast. Its purpose is to bring like-minded patriots together. PatriotFB.com is a place where we can all go to unite without fear of censorship. I've heard so many stories in the past of Facebook shutting down people's accounts or putting them in some kind of like Facebook jail which prevents you from posting. I think our number one goal right now should be to network together on multiple social media sites, not just one. We need all of them. That way, if we do get banned or censored on one site, we can always just switch to another one. And if we start up a new account on Facebook or something like that after we got banned, we have ways of communicating to people to get in contact with us again on our new account. So if we do this, the message of liberty is going to get out. But we have to connect together. You know, I think PatriotFB.com is a great way for us to network together and to share the message of liberty. You know, also, don't forget to look for me on there and add me as a friend. I think I'm Profile 31 or something like that, but just Google the name, just look up the name there on the search, Mack Worley III. So, anyway, that's this week's challenge. Get out there, guys. Get on the move. Network together, all right? So, one thing I would actually like to talk about here is we have a clip from Obama, and he's talking about the scandal in the IRS. And I don't know if you guys have been following this scandal or not, but it's pretty unbelievable at what's going on. It's obvious now that the Tea Party has been targeted by the IRS, and you know it's pretty crazy to me that this kind of corruption is going on. But, you know, at this point, it really doesn't surprise me because we've seen this time and time again of these people just willing to violate our rights. So, anyway, I have a clip of President Obama. I'm looking for it right now. I'm trying to find it. So, let me see if I can find it here. Doesn't look like I have it. Oh, crap. All right. Here we go. Never mind. I got it. It's right here.
I got to get to the IRS because I don't know what happened there, and I'm hoping maybe you can tell us. Douglas Shulman, former IRS chief, he was cleared into the White House 157 times, more than any of your cabinet members, more than any other IRS guy in the history by far. Okay, why was Douglas Shulman here 157 times? Why?
Mr. Shulman, as the head of the IRS, is constantly coming in because at the time we were trying to set up the healthcare.gov. And the
what did he have to do with that?
The IRS is involved in making sure that that works as part of the overall healthcare team.
So it was all healthcare?
Number two, we've also got the IRS involved when it comes to some of the financial reforms to make sure that we don't have taxpayer-funded bailouts in the future. So you had all these different agendas in which the head of the IRS is naturally involved.
Did you speak to him a lot yourself?
I do not recall meeting with him in any of these meetings that are pretty routine meetings.
Okay, so you don't recall seeing Shulman, because what some people are saying is that the IRS was used at a local level in Cincinnati, maybe other places, to go after.
Absolutely wrong.
But how do you know that? Because we still don't know what happened there.
Bill, we do. That's not what happened. Folks have, again, had multiple hearings on this. I mean, these kinds of things keep on surfacing, in part because you and your TV station will promote them.
But when folks actually are unanswered questions?
Bill, when you actually look at the stuff, there have been multiple hearings on it. What happened here was that you've got a 501c4 law that people think is confusing. That the folks did not know how to implement. Because it basically says...
So you're saying
if you were involved,
no corruption there at all? No.
That's not what I'm saying. That's actually...
No, but I want to know what you're saying. You're the leader of the country. You're saying no corruption?
No.
None?
No. There were some boneheaded decisions out of a
but no
office.
Mass corruption?
Not even mass corruption. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Okay.
Not even a smidgen of corruption in the IRS scandal. Honestly, does this guy think we are we're idiots? Actually, yeah, he does think we're idiots. He just said that he thinks that people are easily confused, and that's why these laws are being perceived as being broken, and that there's corruption inside here. But how can he say that there's not even a smidgen of corruption in the IRS? How would he know? We haven't been able to find out what happened. Lois Lerner hasn't even told us anything about what happened because she's pled the fifth. And on top of that, she said, I didn't do anything wrong. And then she pled the fifth, which you can't do. You have to plead the fifth because you don't want to incriminate yourself, which means that you may have done something wrong. And, you know, saying that she didn't do anything wrong means that she can't incriminate herself, which means that she can't plead the fifth. And let me give you my opinion on the Fifth Amendment, because I'm hearing this a lot from other talk show hosts, and you know, I think I heard it was on Rush Limbaugh or something like that, and they're bashing the Fifth Amendment. I'm a fan of the Fifth Amendment. I don't think that we should have to testify against ourselves, but I don't necessarily think that it does mean that you're guilty. I think that it's very easy to not know that there was a law that you broke. So a good policy is to not testify against yourself, because there's so many laws in the books. We were talking with Chris Rockhold just a little bit ago about all these laws. We're barraged with every year. They just keep throwing more and more laws at us every year. And we don't, I mean, it's impossible for us to know if we're in violation of a law. I could be in violation of a law right now and not even know it. You could be in violation of many laws right now and not know about it. So it doesn't mean that you're a criminal because you pled the fifth. And I think it's wrong to say that Lois Lerner pleading the fifth means that she's guilty. However, she shouldn't be allowed to plead the fifth after she said, I didn't do anything wrong. Because now you've just said that you didn't do anything wrong. You know for fact that you did nothing wrong. So if you know that you were in violation of no laws whatsoever, then you are not eligible to plead the fifth, because you just told us that you're not guilty. You've done nothing wrong. So now you can't incriminate yourself. Tell us everything you know. So that's my thoughts on that. You know, I just wanted to give you guys my take on that. But anyway, that was today's show. I hope you guys liked it, and I sure do appreciate you all for tuning in. You know, if you want to join the conversation next week, the phone number to the show is 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com and let us know what you have to say. I'll read your email live on the air. Anyway, we appreciate your continued support. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you to Representative Candidate Chris Rockhold from the Washington Libertarian Party for District 17, Position 2. Don't forget to tune in next week. We're going to have Chad Kent on the show. He's an award-winning speaker and author of the book Uncomplicating the Constitution. It should be a really good show. We're going to talk about the Constitution, and it's going to be fun. So anyway, Don't forget to check us out at onthemoveshow.com, here at blogtalkradio.com/onthemoveshow, facebook.com/onthemoveshow, youtube.com/onthemoveshow, and twitter.com/onthemoveshow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.